full. So plus 69, nice. So experience, this is only mobbing, right? When you're bossing, experience is completely out of the equation. If you're like level 175 and you're training and you're doing a Horntail can give like a decent amount of experience, but you're mainly already training with that character, so you might still have it on. But other than that, most bosses, experience is completely negligible, and this is purely for mobbing. Specifically like the orbs, right? The combo orbs, that's only going to happen during mobbing. Rune duration, only during mobbing. And then the Mercedes could apply on some bosses, but yeah, you get that pretty well. Skill cooldown reduction is good for both. Buff duration is good for both. Crit rate is great for both. You always want to, so that's one of the main base things in Maple, is that you want to get your critical rate up to 100% at all times. In the beginning, if you have it up most of the times, it'll already be very good. But eventually, you want to go to 100% crit rate at all times on all characters. And this is because we have a lot of sources of critical damage, and critical damage only applies when you hit a critical. So it is critical to always have 100% critical rate, so that your critical damage can apply fully and not have reduced efficiency. Percentage damage is usually good for both. Like Adele has a combination of damage per party member, so that one is not good here at all. Angelic Buster is also only for burst, so that's only bossing as well. So the Ilium one is only when you move, so that's typically better for mobbing and not at all for bossing, because boss moving is pretty unreliable, except if you are a class that has mobility in your attacking. So let's say when you're a Nightwalker or a Dawn Warrior, for example, when you're using your attacking kit, you're constantly moving in that, and that mobility is enough to keep the Ilium buffs stacked, to keep that damage buff up all the time. But also for some classes, it's not good during mobbing. Some classes just stand still in the middle of the map and just face right, left, and don't really move around that much, or they move around irregularly, and then the buff only applies half the time, or not most of the time. And what you want for buffs when you're mobbing is things that are up all the time, so you can increase your baseline of damage, so that you can have reliable 100% kill speed. Yeah. So, mostly for mobbing, but for some monsters, for some characters for bossing, and for some not at all for mobbing. So again, it's character specific. The Arc one, always. Probably one of the best link skill. Wild Hunter is mainly if you're a Hurricane type class, but it will eventually... but it's a Legion, right? That's not link skill. But it will eventually be in everyone's Legion, provided your Legion gets big enough. Because it's just extra damage, and a bunch of other Legion cards will barely give you any extra damage. Guys, we're doing something serious right now. But I guess Suction is pretty serious too. Kadena is mostly for bossing, not so much for mobbing, because it places a debuff, and then after the debuff you do more damage to the target. But with bossing you're trying to one-shot, so debuffing a monster and doing more damage after that doesn't really do that much when you're mobbing. Demon Avenger is just flat, so that's always good. Ho Young is, if any, is only good for mobbing, but the problem is that you only deal extra damage to full HP targets, so it's only useful when one-shotting. If you have 2 or 3 shotting, that it immediately loses so much of its efficiency that a bunch of other link skills get better instead. So this one only has a small window where it's actually useful. Kana is just extra damage. Is specifically very good early on, but gets outclassed later on.
Suction.
And then this is purely for bossing. The mage one, and then the Shadower and Dual Blade also purely for bossing. Where's the other one? Shadower, Dual Blade. Where's Nightlord? Oh, it's up here. Okay. Yeah, because of the critical rate. Yeah, okay. Makes sense. Okay, and then Mezzo Obtain, obviously only during mobbing because bosses don't drop bags anymore. Immunity, only during bossing. Boss damage, only during bossing. ID, only during bossing. Knockback immunity can be useful for both. It's mainly useful for bossing, but for mobbing it can save some getting knocked around as well. Healing is... If you're a warrior, you link it, but if you're not a warrior, you basically never take this unless you're doing a boss when you know you might be dying a lot and you can use any type of healing will maybe increase your survivability, then you maybe take it. If damage is not an issue, but survivability only is, but you usually don't really take this one. And then this weapon attack, magic attack, stats, that's all just, you just fill up the gaps with whatever link skills you have available. Summon duration is like its own mimi little thing that doesn't do very much. And then these are like, I guess if you're hunting for a rare monster, you can use the monster collection from Archer, or you stack it always if you're an Archer, of course. Stat resistance can actually help. For example, if you're doing Hard Lotus solo, and you're looking for, how to fill the slots, the extra attack might be useful. And then the stat resistance will also make it so that when you get hit by falling rocks, you're not stunned as long, so you have less of a chance of being constantly stun locked. So that can be... I guess I should remove this part, because that was basically when we had the old one. Yeah. Yeah, there we go. So that's like basically the breakdown of the Legion and the... So that's mainly the link skills, but the Legion buffs count the same. That's why I throw them all into one grid, because I think the value of a character for your account is the combination of what is link skill and the Legion, right? What if a character has a really good link skill, but a shit Legion, and another character has not as good of a link skill, but a really good Legion? Then overall, I think that second character has a way better value of being of how much value it gives you to your account. So that's why I think that would be a better pick. So that's why I put it together. The only thing I didn't put on here is that characters also give you a link in your beginner tab based on what level you are, right? Like the Blessing of the Fairy and Empress's Blessing. But this is so close together that I don't think it's worth mentioning separately, because it's just really close.